Hi there, and welcome back to the Focal Plane podcast, to which you have, of course, so graciously subscribed. So mental health, our mental health, is something that we carry around with us. We are its personification, whether we're shouting about it loudly, whether we're quietly managing things in the background, or sometimes just not pretending that it's even really there. Now, this conversation is not to be regarded as medical advice, but what I'm really looking forward to is understanding how human connections and our communities around us can empower us not just to cope or to manage, but actually to thrive. Now, my guest today is somebody who has extensive experience in the world of mental health frameworks, specifically mental health support frameworks. And I really want to dive into what it is that makes her think differently with respect to how we should all be looking to ourselves, to our community, to help us all help each other and increase our mental well-being. Jenny Edge, thank you so much for coming on to the Focal Plane.
You're very welcome. Good to be here. Thank you.
Brilliant. So Jenny, just tell us a little bit about where you've come from, just to give us some context. So your background, where you are now, what has led you to this place?
Okay. So I'm an occupational therapist by professional training and qualified back in 1990. And the first placement, I was actually quite frightened about mental health because I had no experience of what that might mean to work in that kind of setting. And so my very first placement, I worked in a mental health unit in London. And I absolutely loved it, really enjoyed it. So when I qualified, that was the work that I went into. So that was when I first started work in mental health. And I moved to the Horsham area in 1998 and started working in mental health services here, just because I really saw the application of my occupational therapy training working in mental health, where you focus not on a diagnosis or people's deficits or what they can't do, but you focus much more on what people's strengths are and to support them in, leading a kind of fuller, better quality of life. So really, to me, applied very much to mental health. So fast forward to now, I had a long career working in the NHS mental health service. So from 1990 through to last year. And now I'm working in the voluntary sector mental health services in West Sussex, which feels like the perfect transition for me, because over the last 10 years, I'd been working much more closely in partnership with voluntary sector organisations like BHT Sussex, West Sussex Mind, the various homelessness services we've got in West Sussex, like Crawley Open House, Turning Tides and Stone Pillow. So I'd been working in the NHS, but bridging the gap between NHS mental health services and voluntary sector, what's embedded more in local communities. And for me to make this transition now to work in the voluntary sector is perfect, because it allows me to use all of my experience and knowledge to build better connections out into the local community. Because, we all know there's a challenge in terms of the resource that we have for health across the board. And obviously that also impacts on mental health. So, I think it's really important for us to look together personally and, in terms of me and my work, at our local communities and how we can link people up to, what's available in the communities, and also support communities to kind of build networks that empower people and enable them to manage their own mental health and know where to go to get support and to feel more, free about talking about mental health and listening to other people if they're having mental health challenges, and hopefully not feeling sort of intimidated by that.
And just to pick up on that point then, so the ethos that you mentioned about us all kind of, being linked together, networking, the holistic kind of approach as to how we, view things to do with our mental health and how we kind of actually help each other with the mental well-being, but also if we're struggling or having challenges, to go on a bit of a road to recovery in that respect.
Yeah.
How has that thinking changed over the time that you've been doing this? So you're talking about a model that like makes a lot of sense, like everything fits. That's neat. I can draw all the lines there. But what have you seen in terms of the change of thinking around that? Were there challenges to that sort of a concept previously, or have we kind of gone full circle a little bit in the space that you've been in?
When I first started working in mental health, I think there was much more of a separation between support that might be available on the NHS and other services like the voluntary sector and what's available in the community. And I think that there was greater emphasis on the NHS services that were available because it was felt that they were kind of better and somehow you'd get, better support or people were more qualified within the NHS. And what I feel's changed over the years is there's, much more of a recognition now of actually the highly skilled and valued colleagues that we have working in the voluntary sector. And, I kind of, I've really noticed a difference in that. And it was 10 years ago when Pathfinder was first set up in West Sussex. And that's when I moved into these kind of roles of working more closely alongside other services and connecting more with the community and, bridging a gap really between NHS mental health services and what else was available. So I would say, in the last 10 years, there started to be a bit of a change there, and I saw an opportunity to be able to do a bit more. So I've always really loved working in mental health and got a lot of satisfaction in supporting people to make the changes that were going to be good for them in their lives and seeing people really thrive and grow through, some mental health support. But I got to a point in my career I wanted to be able to make more of a difference and to see, more of a change. So the opportunity of a new service presented itself, and it was also we were a bit ahead of the curve, to be honest, in West Sussex. And I'm not just saying that because I've been part of it, but we were, and evidence shows that, because what came later, so in 2018 and 19, there was a national framework document for adults and older adults, community mental health services, that was published by the NHS, and within it, the Pathfinder, the clinical service, clinical service that bridged that gap between the voluntary sector and traditional NHS services, that was cited in that document as an example of positive practice for innovation. So it was recognised then that what we were doing in West Sussex was something quite different. So we were ahead of a curve, really, in terms of where government and NHS legislation and kind of thinking was going to take us. And then when you and I first met each other was probably around about 2020. 2021.
2019,
and that's when there had been some guidance published by NHS England to, really promote working together between GP practices and mental health services and these new roles. But in West Sussex, we'd already started doing that. So back in 2019, we'd already set up some services in Worthing and Bognor Regis, working together in partnership between Pathfinder, so the voluntary sector element of Pathfinder, the clinical element, and GP practices, delivering this a mental health service in people's GP practices where it was really easy to access within people's local communities. And then during the COVID years, whenever it was, 2019 to 22, There was a paper that was published which was all about this working in GP practices. And my manager at the time, he sent me a copy of that paper, and I'm not really one for reading papers an awful lot because I find them a bit boring.
Do you?
Shouldn't say that, yeah. But I read this one because he didn't often send me things, and I saw
what it was. Important then.
Yeah, exactly. I thought, this would be a good thing to read. And it was I can't remember what it was titled, but it was clear to me that it was very much in line with what we were already doing. So I read this paper, which, it was like a lengthy paper. But when I got to the end of it, I thought, we're already doing this in West Sussex. So, there have been changes. Legislation and guidance has kind of guided us to where we are now and working more in a more integrated way. But West Sussex were already starting to do that prior to all of that.
And so you talked about being ahead of the curve and putting things into places where people can access in the community and feel more at ease because it's familiar surroundings, these sorts of things. But that wouldn't have always been the thinking.
No.
Right. So what challenges do you think you met in there? Or did you? Did you find that there was some resistance to those sorts of ideas? Did you find that there was some just different philosophies of thinking that weren't necessarily tying together?
Yeah, there were challenges. One of the things that I haven't mentioned, which was really key to the kind of foundations of Pathfinder, is we had people with lived experience that were alongside us, not, as an add-on, but they were an integrated part of the team working with us. So we weren't doing things for people that have been struggling with their mental health and still are. We were developing things with them. So that was really key.
That's a real ground up approach, right?
Yeah.
So that's so key because everything, a lot of the things that we see around us, and I'm not just talking about in this space, but you get a sense of unease when things feel very top down.
Yeah.
Or feel very ivory towered, or feel very separated from actually the whole purpose of it. But working alongside the person who's going on the journey, and building from there, and basically surrounding the situation, the person, understanding from their perspective what is needed, and then meeting that need that way around.
Yeah,
it sounds so obvious.
Yeah,
but it isn't the way that things are always done.
No.
And that at the time, and when we were speaking a few years back, was like, wow, it's just really obvious, but also quite radical in its way.
Yeah. And, and that really is down to the kind of commissioners, the way the service was commissioned, because there were paid roles within Pathfinder for people with lived experience. So they sat on the Pathfinder board.
So really taking that ownership with it, really,
And, there were the underpinning principles of Pathfinder were about, equality, that we were all there with an equal voice and an equal say, and about trust, respect, all these kind of very ordinary but really important values that, were embedded in Pathfinder, and they flow through everything that is Pathfinder now as well. And I was just thinking, as we were talking about, really living from the ground up, so really listening to and working with people with lived experience. So I can think of a few examples of, I won't mention any names, obviously, but a few examples of people that we've worked with. So there were a couple of people that were using our services down in Worthing, and we had the opportunity to go to the House of Lords for Mental Health Awareness Week. So myself and another colleague that worked in the NHS at the time, we went with two service users up to the House of Lords. And then after that, we had a visit from one of the lords from the House of Lords that came down to West Sussex Mind in Worthing. I remember I picked him up in my convertible car. I don't have it anymore. He was quite impressed by that.
So I can imagine the locks of hair flowing as you're picking them up. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And my headscarf, my 1950s headscarf. So we did things like that, but also people that had started, we worked with them as people using our service, have gone on to become experts by experience.
Right. Yeah.
And now there's at least one of those people that works as a peer support worker within the NHS mental health service, and somebody else that trained as a mental health nurse. So to me, that's what it's all about. And that's what I feel most proud about, that it's really about, empowering people and making real differences to people's lives, and supporting people to see their own potential as well. So it's not, they aren't magic things that were created, opportunities that were created for those people through Pathfinder or any kind of legislation or anything else. But it's about giving people the opportunity and the right environment to really kind of flourish and thrive, as you described.
So yeah, absolutely. I love that message, because as cliche as it might sound, you don't really feel these things until you really put yourself next to somebody's shoes and understand the journey that they've been on, which, in many people's cases, and certainly in spaces that I've been listening to these things, you hear some things and you think, but the solution was clear and obvious. What you're doing and what you and your teams around you have recognized is that we don't want to be looking in hindsight and understanding that this should have been done here and etc. and this would have helped this person flourish and thrive.
And I remember a few years after we'd first set up that Pathfinder service with the clinical element, I went back to one of the local NHS teams and was talking, and there was a doctor there who said, "Oh, I remember 2 years ago, this is what you were talking about. And this is what you're doing."
Here's the labour, yes.
So it was really lovely to get that feedback. So what we envisaged and what we thought we could do, that is actually what we've created. And it's just kind of built from there. So that team in West Sussex that had 4 people back in 2016, there's probably about 30 staff. In that team. That's not even included. If you look at the voluntary sector as well, that's, I don't know, I couldn't even estimate 100 plus staff or something, all working together.
The proof is already in that pudding, right? I mean, that doesn't just happen if things are not falling into line in a really beautiful way. That's wonderful. I remember and one thing I'll just I don't know if I ever told you this story, but
oh god, what's he going to say?
So back so for the listeners of this podcast, or the watchers of this podcast, so I had the privileged position of being able to work with colleagues in different trusts around us to understand how to think a bit differently. And I remember the first time we met quite vividly, because it was in a meeting room, and I'm thinking, okay, we're going to talk about something to do with a pilot around different ways of working together as was set out by the long-term plan NHS-wise. And I distinctly recall, and you know how recollections can be a bit skewed, so you might be remembering this differently, but I distinctly recall sitting in the corner of the meeting room in front of a computer taking some minutes or notes. And there was a row of people from your then organisation, including yourself. And I'm thinking, I don't know who you guys are, and I don't really understand your titles, but a couple of you spoke, and it just kind of went, oh, there's something really good here. And where have you guys come from? Where have you been hidden? That was my biggest thought of how have I not heard of this? And partly because it was quite new, but actually just the fact that this group of people had come together, and it included people, obviously yourself, of course, there was somebody from a commissioning side, there were other people who represented different parts of that system, having that real conversation of this is something we can actually make work. This isn't just, talking for the sake of it, meetings for the sake of it, which is something in any organization that happens. But here it was I can really see the potential here. And this would have been around October 2019.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a surprise trip to Hungary in December. And it was at a time where I had to complete some paperwork to do with this project. And instead of spending time with the person I was supposed to be spending time with, I was there with my laptop writing all these bits and pieces I had to fill out. And got it submitted and then heard back that it was all kind of going ahead. I remember just that feeling of elation. I'm feeling it now. Like, I'm just remembering back. I was so like, wow, this is actually going to happen.
Yeah, we put in a bid, didn't we?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I remember that.
It's actually going to happen.
Yeah.
And there and then, I remember it came through on the morning that I was in some hotel in Budapest.
Hooray.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember just like writing this email to all the people copied in, being like, "This is so freaking awesome," in slightly more professional language. But like it's, and then. I'll always remember that vividly as
I remember that.
a seminal moment of being like, yes, this actually has legs to it. Hey, the time that followed after that, hey, look, it hit things out of the park.
Yeah.
It followed a wonderful model where people were coming back after having engaged with Pathfinder mental health support workers, going, yeah, that really made a difference.
Yeah,
and not just through the sessions that they had together, but actually, I feel a bit more connected to things.
Yeah.
Someone once said to me, literally those words, I feel more connected to the ground now.
Yeah, it's really important. Well, one of the things, the thing is, somebody can come to a mental health service for support, and that can be provided for an amount of time. But everyone needs to go back to their ordinary lives, and everyone wants to feel kind of more capable or empowered within their everyday life.
Yes.
So part of, recovery in mental health is having the support, but then looking at, well, how does that link to your life, and supporting people with developing their own self-management plan, so they kind of, understand, when they might need to reach out and get support, but how they can also build their resilience through, everyday life and their connections with, friends, neighbours, local community groups, whatever it might be, volunteering, work, all of those things that are really important, for us all.
Absolutely. And it was, we were fortunate enough as well that, by design, I guess, that we were introducing, social prescribing as a big concept that was really being pushed at that time, which I bought into that hook, line and sinker when it came through.
Yeah.
And it just dovetails so nicely as to this. Yeah. Do you know what? We do need to be more connected to each other, because ultimately, it is very easy to become isolated and not understand what is actually on your doorstep that could help, or be thinking that that's for someone else, or that's a community out there that I don't really feel part of.
Yeah.
And interestingly, only really, even though I thought I got it then, and I worked so closely with social prescribing teams, and when we were developing and or helping to implement that service, it's only now in the last couple of years that I've been doing photography that I see a whole side of the community that was on my doorstep that I thought I understood or thought I knew. And Horsham is wonderful for that. And I'm just thinking, gosh, if I knew these things in pockets of just people being so welcoming and humble and really wanting to reach out and being inclusive, if I felt to that back then, I would have pushed that message 10,000 times harder. I mean, I was already pushing it pretty hard, but being in the community and understanding that in a different way shows you just how much the potential is there. It's untapped. It's still to this day, it's untapped. But the fact that you're thinking around look, we are the people. It takes the village to raise a child. It takes the community to help us move forward in our day-to-day. Concepts that we've all understood from decades past, but so far the fabric of society is not quite what it used to be.
Yeah.
It's getting back to it, I think.
Yeah.
But that way of thinking and understanding that journey is great.
And that's where the kind of voluntary sector organisations really come into their own, because they've got those connections and networks into the local community. You know, they have peer support workers that are running groups out in the local community and linking up with community groups that are all already set up, so that, you know, people feel supported to, and, you know, make an initial contact. So, you know, they're in the absolute best position to continue that recovery journey for people. And the other thing for me as well, which I haven't mentioned up until now, but it's really key, I think, in terms of the way that I think about things and people, is the fact that I'm a Buddhist. So, you know, I'm, you know, really believe that, you know, we all have this kind of potential that we just need to, you know, really, you know, believe in ourselves and tap into that. And so, you know, that really brings together my kind of mental health training and, you know, what I know about the kind of value of connecting in with other people and breaking down those barriers. So, you know, it all, you know, comes together, I think, and enables me to be able to, you know, work in the way that I do. We've got to be able to put a foot in somebody else's world. So when I was working, you know, more directly with people, you know, I was always very aware that I needed to be able to do that, because I can't support somebody if I don't really get how it is from their point of view. But you can't put 2 feet in somebody else's world, because then you lose yourself in it and you're no use to anybody. So you need to be able to put a foot over there and say, oh yeah, okay, it feels something like this. And, you know, it applies to, you know, everything, as you're saying, not just, you know, working in mental health and supporting people, but being able to understand, you know, why that person is behaving like that. And, all right, they might seem different, but I could try and understand, you know, what those differences are about, rather than making some judgments about them or deciding that they're bad or good or, you know, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Because you haven't lived their life, you know, and there's so many people who will turn around and see things like, you know, I imagine anyone who's heard this part of the conversation can imagine scenarios where they've seen people behaving in ways that make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I often think about that, you know, so if somebody is behaving in a way that's like, let's say, less than desirable or something, without putting like too much of a judgment on anything or describing anything. But, you know, it's not like I try and do it, it's become more natural now. I sort of imagine like what I might have had to go through and how much because that person's suffering. If anyone is behaving in a way that isn't very kind to other people, they're not happy.
No, who wants to do that actively?
Exactly.
What human being wants to be in a situation where they're feeling like that?
All of us really would, if we were going to choose anything, we'd choose to be, you know, kind and open and to be happy. And if somebody's behaving in a way that kind of indicates something else, and they're suffering. So, you know, it's finding a way to kind of connect with people and understand what might be the basis of that. And is there something we can do together that might change that?
Yes. I mean, and just to go further on that a little bit. So we've talked a lot conceptually about what those things are. And you've given some real examples of the voluntary sector working alongside the community, working alongside GP practices, working alongside, you know, different systems that are out there. What could the journey look like? Or what can the journey look like for somebody who is in a place where they may be having some challenging scenarios with their own mental health? what does it look like for somebody to kind of come into that service?
Okay.
What could they expect, or what are some maybe myths we can dispel about that?
Okay, so what they can expect, so there are different ways that you could access mental health support. You could go along to your GP practice, and somebody within the GP practice could, point you towards the voluntary sector kind of mental health support in West Sussex. Or there's Pathfinder have got a website, so you can go on there. There's loads of information, and just with 2 clicks, you can put in some information about yourself and just to say that you want to access some support. So you could, so that's available. And you can, of course, do that, 24 hours a day, because not everyone, is really struggling during 9 to 5 when services might be available. You won't get a response in the middle of the night, but you can still feel like you're doing something. So that's a way. And there's also a phone number that people can call, and it's manned between 10 to 4 Monday to Friday. So you can actually speak to somebody.
Right. We'll put some links in the description of this.
So that's, and there aren't criteria to that. If you're struggling with your mental health, then that's enough. You don't have to fit into any other kind of boxes. And then what will happen is somebody will want to find out a little bit more about, what's going on for you. And if what you need is some like self-help resources, or to know about some things that are available in your local community, the BHT Sussex helpline, the advice line, they'll be able to point you towards that. But if you need something a bit more specific, then somebody will actually meet with you, and that, depending on how it works for you, that can be in person, in your GP surgery. It could be like in a community venue, in a cafe, in a park, whatever is going to kind of suit you best. Or there are some options where it could be a virtual, like online meeting, if that's what you're more comfortable with. So there are lots of different options. And then, what's available is there's one-to-one support. So a mental health recovery worker from the voluntary sector would meet with you and, plan to have some sessions with you. Or there are also some groups that are run by people that have had their own mental health challenges. So peer support workers and mental health recovery workers as well. And then, after you've received the support that's kind of been focused on, whatever it was that you wanted to change or see different within your life, then they'll talk with you and support you about how to continue
doing that. Of course.
And make,
and that's the biggest difference here, isn't it? It is about that continuation of, like we were alluding to before, it's not kind of being left on a bit of a precipice there. It is that whole journey of, helping people to thrive and flourish after being in positions where they really felt they couldn't.
And one of the organisations that's working alongside Pathfinder is Capital. So their focus is around people with lived experience. And there's an advisory group called the Lived Experience Advisory Group. So, things that are being developed are taken to those groups, and, staff from within those organisations and people with lived experience that work and volunteer, help influence and, develop all of the, offers that are available.
Brilliant. And so this is, maybe it's just me, and I don't know, I speak carefully about this, I guess, but I don't know that a lot of people are aware of these things.
No, I think you're right. I don't think they are.
I don't think a lot of people who work in the space that I work in are aware of these things. Is that too? I'm not just talking about people that actually need to use the service, which sounds fantastic, but also people who may be wanting to help somebody who's in front of them or signpost somebody to the right place are quite aware of just how involved that is.
And I've been aware of that for the last 10 years doing the work that I do.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that, but maybe it's things like this that are the answer, because it's about getting, and that's why I was so keen to do this podcast with you, although it's like really out of my comfort zone completely.
Me too.
Completely. But because I want to get the word out there. I want people to know, what's available and how much there is that's available. And all right, there are, we know there are resource challenges, but this is what we've got. And the more people that are aware, the more people that might be able to become involved and, support connections in the community, and, what people can access after they've accessed some targeted mental health support. So, I don't know what because we've tried a lot of things. So I've developed, information on a page for GP practices, because there's so much information that's coming through all the time, that we need to find a way of making things really digestible, so you can see at a glance this is what's available. But there is so much, and it's so complex. How do you distill that but you don't lose some of the information that's really valuable?
It's like, it's a good question. I don't know that between us necessarily in this podcast will answer that question, but it's what resonates for me in these is how it makes you feel listening to this, and understanding that, oh gosh, there's so much that I'm not aware of, or may not have been aware of previously, that can really transform someone's journey. And if I'm just seeing these things as words on a page, or a bulletin that's sent through to me, another one, another email that's just going to sit there and great, that doesn't inspire me.
No.
That doesn't make me want to change the way I do things, or help people gravitate towards it. And I think that it's not just about the messaging. It is about how do we really get people alongside people, in this, say walking in their shoes, feeling that journey.
I've just had an idea now.
Okay.
You might have. Well, let's see what you think. There could be an opportunity for you with these podcasts, Sam, to look at doing something that might involve some people that have used services, or something a bit creative.
So you've stolen.
Not that I'm saying this isn't creative.
You have stolen my thunder a little bit. So I was going to, I had in my mind, so of course with all these podcasts, I have a structure that's in my mind and not in yours. And I do that very deliberately, because I don't want these conversations to be scripted. Because no one cares about scripted conversations, or at least I don't anyway. But in my mind, as part of this conversation was going to be, do you know what, Jenny, what we should do is a follow-up, but with somebody who has lived experience. Well, one of the things that I've found is that, and I sort of I said it earlier on, is that sometimes, not everyone, but some people have a bit of a sort of a dated mindset now about where you might get the best support from. And some people feel that if you want the best mental health support, you need to see a doctor and you need to go to an NHS mental health service. That isn't the case. I mean, if you need to see a doctor, then that's absolutely what you need. But if actually a clinical service isn't what you need, then it isn't the best thing for you. So I think that's, some of what we kind of need to dispel. I think that actually there is really well-trained staff within the voluntary sector that have great expertise. And if it's that level of support that you need, which is, still a level of mental health expertise, then that is absolutely the right thing for you. So that, that requires, a bit of kind of change in people's minds, I think. Absolutely. But also recognising as well that when people do approach or are helped with the voluntary sector services, should I say, I know full well that the mechanisms are there for when they are, capable and able to recognize when actually the person in front of them does need that extra support that goes beyond what they can offer. And the links are there.
Yeah.
So that's another really important part, because I don't want people to think that they go to this and actually, or what would they even recognize if if I actually have greater needs than this, or so the answer is yes. That is part of it, to make sure that it's safe and appropriate for whatever someone's situation might be.
So that was the kind of bridging of the gap that I kind of referred to earlier, that we started to set up that team in 2016 to do exactly that, to straddle that space between the voluntary sector and NHS services, so that if people needed an increased level of mental health support that did need to come from a clinical service, they could get it. So that's, I almost don't even think that I need to say it anymore. Of course I do, because it's so much what I know and the way that I've been working for the last 10 years.
But it's the way you assume that everyone knows what you know. That's it. Right?
I know it's not the case. And if you went to other places in the country, it wouldn't necessarily be, available and present in the same way that it is here.
No, absolutely. And I think that's there's so many key messages around that I can imagine, if somebody is not knowing where to turn with things, that it can feel a bit like the voluntary sector isn't the right thing, or just make the assumption that it's not the right way of going.
You can understand that, because if you feel really desperate and overwhelmed and, really you've hit rock bottom, you feel like you need everything, the kind of the most, like well-trained staff and the best service. Of course, that's really natural. But, the fact that the voluntary sector are connected up with everything that's available means that if that is what you need, and the support that you initially get doesn't get you quite where you need to be, it will be available to you. And also those services have really good connections into the NHS mental health service. So if staff need advice, guidance, or, some, additional information, they've got that.
The structures are in place.
The structures are in place. And not only structures, but they've got the relationships. It's all about relationships. We work as, more like one team, really, of colleagues working alongside each other. So it's not like you need a structure and there needs to be a referral form or a meeting or something.
A faceless thing, that's
a
very
conversation.
That's very different. I hope that sort of messaging that we're talking about today is helpful for others who may be feeling similarly. So, maybe some professionals are listening to this, maybe some people who are just trying to figure a few things out are listening to this. But I, like you were saying before, I do see a lot of potential in getting people's voices louder and prouder about that.
I mean, we did, it's probably about 5 years ago, in the kind of previous Pathfinder setup, because it's changed a little bit from the 1st of December, so it's been rebranded. But, the offers, basically the same. But what we'd done is we'd developed a video, and it was service users and staff, talking about, what's available. But, service users talking about the difference that it made. It was so powerful. I think there were 2 or 3 service users that spoke within that video, and it was available on the website. I put it on what was previously known as Twitter. I'd shared it through there, and we'd shared it through Pathfinder networks. But still, it's like, how do you get we can do these things, but how do you get them to the kind of out to the audience, so that the people who need to see it, which is probably everyone, It
is everybody, because you don't know when you might need these things, or when somebody in your sphere, your family, friends, colleagues, it gives it how how much more empowering is it for us, anybody, I really mean anybody, to have a tool in your armory that can actually just immediately start to help or start to push somebody in a better direction.
Yeah.
What's the bigger vision, though? Like, what is? I mean, we have kind of said it in many ways, right?
Yeah.
In various parts of this conversation. But what is the bigger? What's the promised land for you? What's the bigger vision of all this?
It probably would sound quite idealistic, but having communities where connections and opportunities to sort of get involved are kind of readily available. And that's what people are thinking about. What can I do? What difference can I make for myself and for other people in my local community? So that, and I'm sure that would prevent a lot of, mental health issues developing in the first place. Not all at all by any means, but I think it would really strengthen our own resource and our community resource. So personally, and also within our kind of local communities and society. So that's what I'd like to see, really, which again, it might sound a bit idealistic, but, we build communities where people can much more naturally flourish and feel that they've got potential and they can use their capabilities in a way that's going to mean something to them and make their life better.
I mean, you say, I love that. And you said twice there about it sounding idealistic, like it's a bad thing. I mean,
you've got to aim high.
Well, you've got to aim high. But who's inspired by what's ideal? I don't, but what is ideal right now?
Yeah,
we're inspired by what the possibilities are. What could we do? Where can we get to? Okay, do you know what? This feels like maybe this is pie in the sky thinking. Maybe it's a dream above a dream. But if we know that that's the goal, we make sure that we do heaven and earth to get there.
Yeah.
Do we ever reach it? Sometimes we won't. But the journey by which you take to get there will have meant that you'll have done a hell of a lot of good stuff along the way.
Yeah.
You'll have set different mindsets, different cultures, different systems, different processes that you wouldn't do if you were just aiming to keep things status quo.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, what's going to happen if you aim for the status quo, you'll move backwards as things change. We've always got to be challenging ourselves. And I really am a firm believer in that. Set your sights, beyond what you can imagine. Your wildest dreams. Why not? Because if you set your sights there and you're determined to, try and make that happen, well, you might not quite get there, but you'll get a lot further than if you decide, I'm just going to keep things how they are because that's safe.
Exactly. Yeah. And essentially one of two scenarios will occur. Either you'll be living your dream and have had a hell of a lot of fun on the way, or you'll have learned a hell of a lot that will then just make you that much more well-equipped, make you that much more, nuanced in your thinking. That, changes things for you.
You'll have moved yourself forward. You'll have changed your situation. So, I mean, that's the thing. None of us can ever predict, can we, what direction life's going to take. We all know that life is going to be a challenge, and that's not necessarily a negative thing. It's about your mindset and how you approach it. So there are going to be challenging things that happen. So it's about how we use those challenges as opportunities to grow and move in a different direction to what we'd kind of anticipated.
But this is it. Like, it's I love seeing that because, of course, the things that you put into place have started to flourish. Of course, the things that you and the teams around you have really fought to build, create these things we're talking about that just weren't, they didn't exist at all. Certainly in the way that things join up and connect.
No, they didn't exist. Pre 2016 did not exist at all.
It's incredible.
I know. And,
incredible.
And it has been kind of recognised nationally that, West Sussex were kind of ahead of the curve. But
Brilliant. Fantastic. Jenny, it's been amazing to talk to you about this. And I mean, not only hopefully have we talked about some, very practical things, and, real life examples of how this has come to play and how people can start to think a bit differently, but also access services and support that they may not have been aware of. But the biggest thing I'm taking away from this is just being inspired by that tenacity that you've had to do it. Which, like I was telling you in the stories before of my memories of early days of this, was just, you saw the seminal moments going, okay, I like how these people think. Where have you been all my life,
Yeah. Well, it was such an opportunity, and those don't come along very often. So you have to...
The stars quite literally aligned to go, right, bang.
Yeah.
So well done, and please keep going with it. I know you will, but please keep going with it.
Well, colleagues will.
Your colleagues will. Yes, the legacy will continue, shall we say. Yes.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, no one's going to want to give that great stuff that you've helped achieve. No one's going to want to see that fall.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just me.
No, hence I keep saying you and your team, right?
Yeah.
But because there were some fantastic people that I met along the way, along that journey as well, that were absolutely instrumental in building these things. But Jenny, thanks so much for coming on today. It's been great to hear these insights.
Thank you. It's been really good to talk through all of these things. Very interesting.
Excellent. Well, look, I'll be putting up some links for people to follow, and just to get more information and to understand how to access things.
Great.
Brilliant. So guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. It's been wonderful to talk to Jenny. And please do give this a like and a subscribe and share it around, because there's some things here that I really think could potentially help some people. So nothing wrong with that.